All right, so before we jump into today's episode, we do say this during the show as well, but I feel it's necessary to reiterate it here at the top. We pre-recorded this episode back on Monday, so well before Ryan Divish's report came out that Matt Brash may miss significant time with his elbow injury. So some of what you're about to hear may wind up being irrelevant, but we didn't have an opportunity to re-record this because Colby's now out of town. So just wanted to say that. Hope you understand. Nevertheless, please enjoy this episode. Our 2024 Mariners position preview series continues with a look at Seattle's bullpen. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnett for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's LOCKDON to get yourself started. Thank you so much for making us your first listen, subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. And today we're going to preview the Mariners bullpen. And just as we did with the rotation on yesterday's episode, we're going to start with the big three in this group: Andres Munoz, Matt Brash, Gregory Santos. Now, two of those three guys currently dealing with some injuries. But Colby, what are your expectations for these three guys?
I get being a little concerned about Brash because, again, he hasn't started throwing yet and all of that. But until something happens, and maybe by the time you're watching this, something has happened. But until we get news that he's not going to be ready for opening day, I'm just going to assume that he will be. So I'm not all that concerned. We'll see how Santos's throwing program goes tomorrow. If he stays on track for the next couple days, then I think you're probably, reasonably out of the woods there. So as far as, what to expect from these three guys, if healthy, you're not going to find much better in terms of just raw stuff. You're not going to find much better back into the bullpen than these three guys. Houston's is kind of close. It can certainly be right there with Hader and Presley and Montero, Abreu. One of those two probably going to hit. But I feel like when you look at just best bullpens, best back end bullpens in baseball, Seattle has to be top 5 with these three guys. Obviously, Baltimore's not going to have Felix Bautista, and I know they think they fixed it with Craig Kimbrell. They didn't. So, I think Seattle, at the very least, if these guys are all healthy, second best bullpen in baseball or in the American League, maybe the best. Certainly, it's right there with Houston. So, these three guys, they're going to miss a lot of bats. They're not going to give up a ton of home runs, which is nice, and I think they'll throw enough strikes. You never really know with Brash on an outing-to-outing basis, but he did improve pretty greatly there last year. And Santos didn't walk anybody last year. So it's really good stuff. It's all three have elite stuff, just top end stuff. They all throw enough strikes. It's just a matter of consistency. And last year for Munoz, it was mostly consistency. From one outing to the next, you didn't know what you were going to get from him. Brash dealt with a lot of bad luck last year, but he was pretty solid for most of the season. And then, Santos didn't get to watch a ton of him. Obviously, he was pitching for the White Sox last year, but he also was pretty consistently good throughout the year.
Yep.
Every reliever is going to have a hiccup here or there. So, it's easy to remember when a reliever implodes or when he has a bad week or something like that. But overall, just consistently, if you're handing the ball to these three guys with a lead after the 6th inning, you have to feel really good about where you're at if you're the Seattle Mariners and if you're a fan of the Mariners, which you are. So I feel pretty good about these three. It's hard not to, assuming they're all healthy.
So we talked so much this offseason about how this team really needed a third high leverage guy to go along with Brash and Munoz, and they wound up getting that guy in Santos, or at least we think he can be that guy. He certainly was that guy this past year in his first full season at the big league level. Where do you think this bullpen is right now compared to, say, last year's when they had Paul Sewald? Do you think this bullpen is better, or at least has the potential to be better? Or where do you think it kind of falls in terms of the like if you had to rank the last few Mariners bullpens just on paper, where would you place this one?
Probably the best at the top end is this year's team, the 1, 2, 3. Now, last year had Sewald, been here the entire year, then that might have been a little bit better. Probably a higher floor on last year's bullpen with Sewald in it than this year's because there's less injury questions there. Was Sewald in there as Santos, but Paul was not particularly good for Arizona down the stretch. He was pretty good in the playoffs until,
Really good.
unfortunately he made
until the World Series. Yeah.
Yes, but really he was not great for Arizona down the stretch. So, and he's in his 30s now. He's starting to get up there. Santos, younger, more control years, higher upside. So I feel like ceiling wise this year is probably the best we've seen over the last 3 years. Last year you probably you felt safer just because you had some Sewald's kind of the emergency brake in the bullpen, right? Like everything goes to, you can pull on the emergency brake, and Sewald would typically come in and stop the bleeding and kind of get you to reset. I don't know if you have that guy this year. I don't know if you have that veteran who can do that. So I would still say this year's bullpen is better than last year's, even with Sewald in it. But I think they're pretty comparable, just in different ways. So I think this year's bullpen, assuming health again, I think it carries significantly more upside than last year's because Santos might have the second best stuff in this pen.
Right.
And Sewald, well, he has very good stuff, just not close to what Gregory Santos brings to the table. And that's pretty much the swap they made, right? Is Sewald for Santos.
This bullpen has the potential to offer a lot of different looks against teams and throw a ton of gas. We're going to get into that a little bit more in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. With football officially in the books and some time before baseball gets underway, why don't you try your hand at betting on some hoops? Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKDON. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. And as a reminder, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You guys have 2 days left to enter our giveaway and win Colby's stuff. Again, we're recording this on Monday, so we don't really know where we're going to be at by the time that this episode airs in terms of the subscriber count. If we have moved past 11,000, Colby is going to post what you guys can win at 11.1K if you get us there on Twitter, I believe. And I think I'll also post it. I'll just copy his tweet over and post it in the community notes here on YouTube as well. So if you guys don't use Twitter, you can still see it over on here. But really quick, can you remind folks what they can win?
Sure. So we're doing a Mariner mystery box, I guess we're calling it, although we're revealing the mysteries as you guys, move past each every 100 new subscribers. We reveal what could be added to the box next. So, so far in the box, let's see. We have how many of these can I? There we go. So far we have this Prelander Barreau autograph card. 5 out of 5. Only 5 of these in the world.
Love that one.
And you'll get one. Beautiful card. We have this Las Montes numbered Bowman Chrome Refractor card. You have this Harry Ford Bowman Chrome Refractor card, non-numbered. We have Randy Wynn autograph card going in the box. We have this lovely Jared Kelnick numbered autograph card. Not on the team anymore, but it's a beautiful card. So throw that in there. And we have this Mitch Garver autograph card with 2 jersey patches on it, numbered. That's all going in the box. And since you guys, yes, and since we're about 43 or so away from 11,000, we get to 11,000. We're going to add Kyle Seager to the box in the form of this unopened bobblehead. A few years ago, never been opened, still sealed. And then on top of the bobblehead, we'll throw in this autograph Kyle Seager card. So you guys have seen this before. If we're past this mark, make sure you check our socials to see what is being added to the box if we get to 11.1K. But yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing. It's a Mariners prize mystery box going to one of you. All you have to do to enter is leave a comment down below on any of the videos between last Monday and this Thursday. And we will pick a winner next week because I will be out of town on Friday. We'll pick a winner next Monday. And one of you will get the box. So just leave a comment on any of the videos. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and check out the terms and conditions in the description down below.
So we talk all the time about how this Mariners organization can seemingly pluck mid-leverage relievers out of thin air. And they did it again last year with guys like Taylor Saucedo and Gabe Spire. And I feel pretty good about both of those guys being a part of this bullpen, at least as far as opening day is concerned. Obviously, I think Spire is pretty much a lock. I think Taylor Saucedo is also a lock. I'm not sure if you agree with that or not. I know you've kind of left that up in the air a little bit when we've talked about this bullpen. But what are your expectations for those two guys?
Yeah, Saucedo is interesting. Spire's definitely in. There's really no question about that. He is, I think, looked at by the Mariners as their 4th high leverage arm. He was very good last year, and there's still room for growth there. Saucedo, he's got some issues primarily against right-handed hitters and walking them. It's something like a 17% walk rate against right-handed hitters last year. That's a problem. You can't really be a loogie in today's, bullpen mix. So Sauce was pretty good last year, but there are some concerns about some kind of regression that could come. But I think he's definitely got the inside track right now over a lot of other guys, but he does have an option left. So he is in danger of being sent down for somebody who doesn't have an option left. Like Javera, who we're probably going to talk about in a little bit. So Spire is definitely in. Again, I think the Mariners. I think the Mariners might feel comfortable enough with Spire to keep Brash like on the IL to start the year if they need to. Like they're not going to push him because they feel like they already have a 3rd, or in this case 4th high leverage arm in Spire. So feel really confident about that. Gets a ton of strikeouts. Saucedo, kind of a classic middle guy, lefty middle guy. If you're going into the 6th inning and it's 4-2 and you're going lefty, righty, lefty, 6, 7, 8 or whatever, Saucedo's probably the guy you're going to go to get out of that. But he can fill a couple different roles, mop up duty. He can get you 5 outs in the middle of a game. Heck, he even got a save last year. So
pretty awesome.
I don't want to write Saucedo into the bullpen with Penn, but I would say he's got a pretty significant leg up to be, the 5th member of this bullpen.
So beyond those two guys, Trent Thornton was brought in later on in the season. Pretty good year. Had some home run issues. Yep. Awesome Voth, I think, is going to make this team because it seemed like they had a specific role carved out for Anthony Desclafani before they traded him to the Twins as kind of that swingman 6 starter maybe type that they would just stash away in the bullpen. I think that guy ends up becoming Voth, who they gave a major league deal to. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, doesn't have options. So I feel pretty good about him making the roster. And then we get into the crop of the other guys that they've accumulated over the course of this offseason. And I'm not even going to be able to name all of them because they've added so many guys. But, it's the Joey Crabels of the world, the Cody Boltons of the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mauricio Javera, who you mentioned. So how do you think the rest of this bullpen shakes out? And I know I've omitted a couple of names here that I know you want to talk about, specifically Carlos Vargas, but we'll talk about those guys a little bit later. But what do you think about some of those other guys that they've added this offseason?
Yeah, I think Thornton is. I feel like he's more of a lock than even Saucedo. I think they really like him. He can spin a breaking ball really well, and he's 95, 96 with the fastball. So if you just refine the control a little bit, ease some of the home run, and he's kind of a multi-inning, middle of the game type that does have value. Can pitch the 7th against the bottom of the order type of guy with a 2-run lead and all that. So I feel like he's pretty well set to be on this team. He's also out of options, just like both. Both feels like he's going to be on this team, if for no other reason than it feels like they want to use that 8th spot in the bullpen on a long relief type, particularly early in the year as they kind of ease these guys in to their workloads. We know they're not going to push these guys past 100 pitches in April very often. So, it's maybe, hey, Austin, we need you to go 2 today because Castillo can only go through 4, or hey, we need you to go get this last out in the 6th in a 4-1 game because, he's at 90 pitches. We don't want to push him. So go do that. And then maybe you pitch the 7th. And then, it's, hey, maybe we go 6-man rotation for this week just to try and push and give some guys some rest. And then Voth goes 4 innings on that day. So I feel like Voth is I don't want to say he's a lock to make this team because I think he still has to prove that he's worthy of a major league roster spot, but he looked pretty good today. There is some success as a starter in his history as well. And he does have a pretty good breaking ball and a pretty useful fastball to get some value out of it. So I feel like Thornton and Voth are both in. And if Saucedo is also in, then we're at 7 guys, which leaves 1 spot for 6 or 7 guys at least, I think. So
yeah.
I feel like Voth and Thornton are both in as kind of the multi-inning, middle of the game relief types.
So of that group of, Crable, Bolton, Snyder, Javera, Diaz, etc., which of those guys intrigues you the most?
Well, since you didn't say Carlos Vargas, I assume I'm not free to add him into this.
We're going to talk about him in a bit. Yeah.
Okay. So Javera doesn't have any options left. And I think that the competition between those guys in particular is close enough that you probably give that last spot to Javera because, again, he doesn't have options left. They're all kind of middle guys, and he's 94 to 98 with some run and a decent sinker or a decent slider. So I feel like he's kind of the guy that they want to take a shot on in that group. So I would say he has the edge. And then, you start looking at guys who are on the 40-man. Colin Snyder's on the 40-man. Cody Bolton's on the 40-man. Whereas guys like Crable and Buttrey, they are not on the 40-man. So, I think the kind of the dark horse here to look at, guy on the 40-man, not really dark horse. I think we all know who I'm going to say is Jackson Coar. But,
yeah.
He does have an option left, and he does have starting experience. And like we talked about on yesterday's show, this team isn't exactly deep in terms of like major league option guys who have starts in the major leagues. And so if you can push Coar down to AAA, put him in the rotation, and then when you need him in the bullpen, you can just call him up and shorten his role. But it's about getting him reps in Tacoma. So I think because of all that, I would say Javera probably has the best shot out of that group to crack this opening day roster. Although I do really like Crable as well. I think
I do too.
What he did in Baltimore in 2022 was really slept on, and he's a guy who just excels at getting weak contact, and that's kind of what you want from a middle guy.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Joey Crable has some Nick Vincent to him.
Yep.
All right. So, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about Carlos Vargas coming up because I know Colby really, really likes Carlos Vargas. So I wanted to dedicate
I'm
a
sorry,
whole segment.
you don't like 102 with a nasty slider.
We're going to get to it. We're going to get to it. We're going to get to it. We're going to get to it.
God
Just
forbid.
a second. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. And with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. So forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen as we preview the 2024 Seattle Mariners bullpen. And we have left for last here on our preview Carlos Vargas, one of the two players acquired in the Eugenio Suarez trade with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Again, I wanted to dedicate a whole segment to him because I know you love Carlos Vargas. And my question for you is, if they do hit on Vargas, what does that do for this bullpen, knowing everything else that we just talked about, knowing everything that they already have in this bullpen? What could adding an arm like the one Vargas can be do for this bullpen?
Best in baseball.
I think it could go beyond that, because I mean, you can easily argue that they're already the best in baseball as is.
Right. Vargas is 98 to 102 with some run on the fastball.
Yeah.
And a pretty darn good slider.
Yeah.
Like a 60 grade slider.
Yeah.
Now, can he throw enough strikes for that to matter? That's the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
If he can, then you're looking at Munoz, Brash, Santos, Spire, Vargas.
Yeah.
Spire's the worst guy in that group, and I'm not sure it's close.
Yeah.
And Spire was, for long stretches of last year, a pretty good high leverage arm.
Yep.
Like, that's what Vargas brings that nobody else that we've talked about so far can touch. Nobody has high leverage upside like Vargas does. It doesn't exist with any of those other arms. Maybe some mid leverage guys like Jackson Coar, but I don't think anybody has the high leverage, because again, talking about 98 to 102 with a wicked slider, that's Andres Munoz. Add his second Munoz to this bullpen and tell me how good the bullpen is. So is it likely that he gets to that level this year? No, probably not. But the beauty of it is that you got 5 years to try, 6 years to try, and you've got a couple options there too. So I just think that he is the guy who can take this bullpen from really good to potentially legendary. And what it also does is, if Matt Brash is on the IL, or if Santos has to go on the IL, or Munoz, if you miss one of these guys for a month or two, you're still a great bullpen. Like, you're no longer like, oh, we got 2 guys we feel really good about, maybe 3. Now you're like, oh, okay, we still have 4 guys that we feel like can end this game for us after the 6th inning. So, and also, you have to work in this reality that you're not always going to have everybody available every day. There are going to be days where Brash is down because he threw 24 pitches the night before. There's going to be days where, Santos has pitched 3 of the last 4. He's got to be down tonight. And you have to have somebody else step up to fill that role. And there are going to be nights where Brash and Santos are going to be down, or Munoz and Santos are both going to be down. And you're going to need that guy to kind of step up. And instead of that being Trent Thornton, like it was at the end of last year, what if it's basically Santos, like a clone of Santos or a clone of Munoz who does that instead? So that's the difference maker right there. Like, that is the guy. Now, if they don't hit on him right this year, it's not the end of the world. It's still a very good bullpen. It might be the best in baseball, but if they do hit on Vargas in particular, and everybody else is just healthy and within like 10% of what we think they can do and what we think they will do,
And what they have done.
Yes, you're going to hand the ball like every night. You're going to hand the ball from Castillo, Gilbert, Kirby, Woo, Miller. Most nights, obviously, you're going to need more starters than that, but you're going to give the ball from those guys directly to Matt Brash, Gabe Spire, Gregory Santos, Andres Munoz, Carlos Vargas. Like, the game's over after 4. Essentially, you can be that good. So a lot has to go right to get there.
There will be some nights where 2 runs is more than enough.
Yes, there definitely could be. So, we'll see. You have to get there, and all these guys have to perform, and they have to be healthy at the same time.
Yeah.
So far from a guarantee, and it's not likely in any scenario. Is it?
No.
Are the odds greater than 0% that it happens? Pretty significantly, yes. So, yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dane Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.